Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. It's like we're all in here together now. Not just people by myself. I apologize that I'm standing right here next to this podium. We only had 4 mics that could move around, and those have been given to the 4 people who are going to be working with you in breakout groups. So I'm a little tethered now to this microphone. I apologize for that. And since we're talking about the 4 people who will be working with you in breakout groups, why don't I introduce them right now? And it's important, to leave this podium, it's important that you remember who your person is, because even though we're going to do some activities where we totally move around this room, at some point I'm going to ask you to find your facilitator and come back to your choir. Okay, so let me introduce you to Nancy Reyes. Stay by this mic. Nancy Reyes, do you mind standing up for the one? Oh, okay, thank you. That's awesome. Thank you. That's where you clap. Okay, promoted! Yes! The first generation program members at the Multicultural Affairs Office. Over here we have Dr. Lynn Stanton-Riggs. Let's see, over here, Lily Gradilla here from the Office of Civic and Community Engagement. And then over on this side facilitating, we have Dr. Isaac Carter, who works over at the law school. Well, to get started, let's have a look at the 3 main things we're going to talk about today. So first, I'd like us to think about what it takes to really make a paradigm shift, to really change your thinking in a way that you thought you'd never think, or ideas that never had entered your mind again. How do we accept those ideas? How do we let them have a place in our mind or in our hearts? Sometimes you do have to give yourself permission for that. Sometimes you have to give other people permission for that, because maybe we've heard a lot of the same thing over and over again, and it's hard to maybe think differently. The second thing we're going to talk about is communication and interaction, because part of the ways we learn and grow is by encountering other people. In fact, often that's the greatest way we learn and grow, because we're used to our thing, we're used to our family, we're used to our track, and then we run into somebody who's very different, and it challenges a lot of our assumptions. So, but is that going to be a good interaction if your communication with that person is stilted, if it's not a healthy communication? So we'll talk about communication and interaction. What feels good for you when you interact and when you communicate? And then finally, we're going to talk about what that means in terms of your sense of identity. Who you think you are, what makes you who you are, and we'll do that. So those are the 3 things we're going to talk about today. So, we're going to just dive right in with a video that's a little creepy, but it's okay. It's a little creepy. This takes a minute to start.
Today, Beatriz and
she was like, it started off with her, you know, in that scene where she's getting ready to take it off. So it's like, it was showing, like, in the beginning, it was showing just before she took it off, and then showing how she got there.
Okay, so kind of that media race, things that happens in literature sometime. Okay, thank you very much. Here you go, got a little video for you. Anybody else have an idea of why that mask is broken to begin with?
Because her mask has already started to crack at the start of the film. She's under so much pressure as a person that she just can't keep up the lie of who she is anymore.
Okay, why do you think in the scene where they are in the classroom and she's got that notebook out, every other student, who also has a mask, has their hands folded, their head down. She's the only one kind of looking up and doing something. Why are all the other students with their hands folded and their heads kind of bowed? There's this allegory of the cave, and only one person, one slave leaves the cave, and then that person has a duty.
Well, I guess the phrase that be different, where a phrase says stand up against anyone else.
So they were afraid, maybe they didn't hear the first part of what you said, so people were afraid to be different?
Yeah, afraid to be different, afraid to stand out against anyone else, because you all have to
Conform to be the same. Yeah. Some of those have magnets, some of those are just key clips, the little Leos that are going around. What does she mean at the end when she says, "Today the truth found her"? What's that about? Yes.
I just feel like she was trying to break the mold, and by doing that, she found her own truth.
And what were some of the truths she confronted that day? What are things she kind of ran into?
I think she just seen that it was kind of just a stereotype. Everyone was the same person like that. Closer to said this is beautiful. She was just trying to find her own truth when she did that by taking off the mask.
Yeah, people who were trying to fit into what beautiful was like. Okay, cool. So I appreciate that you're really thinking of what these things could mean and that you centered yourself here on this activity and what we're doing here today. I really appreciate that. I can see that you're doing that. And so let's keep on going here. So let's go back to the very first thing I said we'd talk about, which is permission for a paradigm shift. And that's what the aha is about. Has anybody ever heard of an aha moment? And what would you describe an aha moment as?
A moment of revelation, or a moment when you notice something that isn't necessarily in your paradigm, and so you say, oh, aha, that is different, that is new, and it allows you to open up yourself.
Cool. Right, so a moment where something is different and new, and I think he's sharing his little guide with you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well that's okay, there's always more. All right, so, but to have a paradigm shift, we have to be generous. If it's somebody else who's having the shift, we have to be generous with that person. And if it's ourselves, we have to be generous with ourselves. That we allow somebody to try a new idea, that we give them the space, we give them the understanding to not be the same person they always were. Because that's hard. Sometimes maybe our friends or our families, maybe you have new ideas and you want to behave and think in a different way, but you're kind of locked into the way people expect you to be. Whether it's your family or your friends, or even your own ideas that you had in your own head. So how can we be more generous when people want to try being different? And not just other people, how can we be generous with ourselves and allow that to happen? The next little film I want you to see, it's real short, is a couple, two people who I think are being very generous with each other and allowing for a paradigm shift. So let's have a look at that. So in that little film, who's the teacher, who's the learner?
The child is teaching the parent.
Yeah, it seems like she knows something, right? Sorry. It's good that they're soft, so we don't poke someone in the eyeball. So your answer was that the child is teaching the mom. Who had a paradigm shift in this film?
The mom did, because she was originally feeding him the octopus, and he was explaining to her why they shouldn't eat animals at all.
That was really something. Do you think anybody else had a paradigm shift in that film?
The little kid did as well, because the little kid realized they had to follow the mold. They were breaking the mold with eating animals, and they did on their own.
I'll go back and get you one. Got one in my pocket. Yeah, so here's a situation where the mom learned from the son, but both of them had a paradigm shift. And you could see it on his face, couldn't you, when he was realizing, oh my goodness, all these animals, we've been eating these animals, and for him, it really took him back. And as a mom, you're always saying, oh, eat all these things that are good for you, this protein and this fish. And the mom was willing to say, even though he was a tiny little boy, and she must have been programmed herself to eat all these things that she put in front of him, she was willing to stop. So, do you see examples of generosity there between them? Because it might not have been very common for the mom to say, You eat what's in front of you, you're gonna waste your food, and that's what we eat, that's what we put it, this is not a restaurant, this is the food you have on your plate. But she didn't do that. She was very generous with him and allowed him to be who he was, even at 3 years old. So I think to have these paradigm shifts, we have to be generous with ourselves, so you let yourself have a new thought, and then when we see people around us trying to think differently, let them do it. Give them some space. Inquire why they're doing it. Show them generosity. Show them kindness so that they can think differently. Sometimes we need a little help to be able to do that. Okay, so now we're going to start focusing on communication, and the time has come to get up. Just hold on 1 second. Here are a couple of things that we're going to talk about here in communication. What is your communication style and how might it affect your interactions and your responses? And secondly, how do you interpret and respond to other people's communications, particularly when it's quite different from your own? So that's what we're going to do. And for this first part, this exercise, we're going to work with 3 of these posters. So over here you see one that says almost always. Right across from it, almost never. And over here, sometimes. So all of us, all about 100 of us, are going to stand up, and I'm going to, just 1 second, and I'm going to read statements. When I read that statement, you walk over to the poster that best describes how that statement relates to you. Almost never, almost always, or sometimes. Then the last thing I'm going to say about this is it's a silent activity. So the only thing we're using are ears and eyes, because besides listening, of course, to these questions that I'll ask you, observe where people are going and what they're doing. Okay? So if you want them to stand. So here goes the first one. I think about the way I communicate. I think about the way I communicate. Almost always, sometimes, almost never. And again, let's make this a silent activity. And just observe. Some folks you know here in the room, some folks you don't. And maybe what you're seeing is surprising you, maybe not. Next one. I am the first to speak. I am the first to speak. We have a real mix on this one, pretty much. Again, take a look at folks you know, folks you don't know. How does this affect the way your interactions go? I need to be invited to speak. I need to be invited to speak. I'm uncomfortable talking in a large group. I'm uncomfortable talking in a large group. I wait to share until others have spoken. I wait to share until others have spoken. Again, take a look at what you're seeing, who's moving, who's not. When communicating with others, I'm uncomfortable with silence. I'm uncomfortable with silence when communicating with others. I get people don't respond promptly. Think about too, as you're doing that, do some questions that seem similar to you, you find yourself yet taking different positions, and why might that be? I will readily say what I feel, even if others don't like it. Readily say what I feel, even if others don't like it. I feel most comfortable with people who communicate like me. Is this an in-between? Or you're really here? You're saying, oh, okay. Just clarify our positions, that's all. I can go from topic to topic quickly when talking. So let's be honest, let's see here. I appreciate others' interjections and opinions when I'm talking. I'm comfortable with conflict. People tell me I'm too loud. And our last reflection, I communicate very similar to how my family communicates. A group over an almost never. All right, please go back to the quarter you were sitting in this room. And your facilitator is going to now speak with you in your small group. Now we're going to all come back together on this, on communication, and how it has something to do with how we relate to people. So, absolutely. And yes, you may move chairs.
Self-regulated and not talking as much because I was so I
after like I'm in the middle of a sentence and then never gets back to me. And so like when I do that to people, I always try to be like, oh, you were saying about like, you know, the war in Afghanistan or something like that. And so just that point really got to me.
Thank you. And I'll share something off of the point you're making. I'm Cuban, and in my family, anyway, my Cuban family, everybody talks at the same time. And when I was in a very serious relationship with a person who was Anglo, and he was from an Irish-American family, so very different. I remember that I went to his family's house for, forgot what it was, you know, some sort of holiday, Thanksgiving, something like that. And I'm used to, in my family's house, everybody's talking at the same time, and we're chopping something, oh yeah, you said that over there, oh yeah, blah, 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 oh, hey, no, I heard what you said over there, blah, blah, blah. And it's just going all over the place all the time. Like, have you seen the, have you played bingo? And they have that thing that bubbles with the balls? That's like conversation in my family's house. So then I go to this significant other's house in New England, and we sit down to talk. We sat down in a formal living room, and there were all chairs in a circle, so everybody kind of like how you're sitting. And it's a big family, so there were a lot of people in the circle, and it was like a game of catch. And not the balls in the ping pong, not, you know, the bingo thing, it was like catch. So someone received the ball, and then someone would throw the ball, and another person would catch it, the rest of us were doing nothing, then that person would then throw the ball. So it was a totally different experience for me, and I was so stressed out. It was very stressful for me to communicate that way, because that wasn't my habit, that wasn't how I communicated, so I felt very like on pins and needles during that. And of course I had to adjust, you know, over time, but that was my experience with that. And so I know I still do that, and so I have to have people say, well, I was talking, you know, because that's just part of, you know, my comeuppance, that's how I grew up, and so I have to check myself all the time because I know other people don't speak like that. What else happened in your groups that was kind of like an aha moment, or, oh, that's very different than how I am and how I am? There was lots of talking going on.
One of the people in our group mentioned it, and I thought the exact same thing. I had to think about after each sentence he said, I have to think about it because how I react with different people varies. So how I am with my family is a lot different than how I am at school. How I am at school is a lot different from how I am with my coworkers. Like it varies from person to person. Even within those big groups, broken down is very different. So I had to think like, well, do I do what was more often the case, or do I do what I want is to be the case with everyone, stuff like that.
And do all those parts feel like you when you're like this and you're like that and you're like that? Or
yeah, it's just I think it's something else someone else in our group said is reading people. If someone's I'm very timid, so if someone's talking to me and they're really timid too, it's like not much is going to get said between us. If someone comes at me and they're very big and outgoing, then I try and match that.
We saw something in that very first creepy video that was like that. What was that thing that we saw in that video? That was an example of exactly what you just said. Remember? Say it. Here you go. Yes.
She had to do her mask on first, and then she walked up to a group and then changed it to match them.
Exactly. So she had a white mask or something like that, and she took it off to join a group who had a purple mask. So we do that. We fit our groups. We know we have to. I mean, that's part of life. Sometimes you gotta adjust to fit your group. What else was either funky or actually awesome about that activity for you? I've got critters in my pockets. Yes. Come up.
It was more of a set of rules, like where we're supposed to stand in society and what we're allowed to say or what's wrong. Like if we're allowed to be outspoken, who judges that? We sort of made it like our bosses, our teachers, our parents. Like you can't speak against them yet. We all try to speak our mind, or we encourage society to speak our mind in freedom of speech. But then we get shot down and we speak against a parent because we're back talking, or if we talk against a teacher and we're wrong, or if we speak against a boss and we're wrong. So So our group, we tried to find out where it was appropriate, and someone said that if you have information to back your statement up, but even then, in some cases, you're still wrong in the end.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, speaking your truth. People don't always want to hear it, and sometimes you're not saying it at the quote-unquote right time. But maybe it does feel right for you in that moment. One more thing that maybe was uncomfortable for you in that group, or maybe you looked around and were surprised at the movement of people you know. Did anybody have that experience? People you know, you saw them moving, you said, oh, that doesn't seem like him or her. Anybody have that experience?
No pressure, but we're the only group that hasn't done
I was observing those things. Nancy was saying her group hasn't said anything yet, so.
it. They're shy.
No, they're not. They were loud.
I guess just like actually moving, I was just like seeing who was in spots, and I'd make eye contact with people, and some people didn't make eye contact. And then I guess what our group was mostly talking about was introverts and extroverts and how we deal with each other. And then we kind of had like, not a little conflict, but we were talking about what if all of us were extroverts and we all like made the same opinion that if we were all extroverts, then like some of us wouldn't be able to listen and voice our own opinions, and maybe not everyone's thoughts would be heard. We will just be trying to overtalk each other and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Everything you're talking about, of course, could affect us when we encounter people who are different than us, who don't possess the same layers of identity that we possess. Just like my significant other had some interesting conversation because I wasn't used to how he was brought up, he wasn't used to how I was brought up. And so that can happen all the time, or maybe people speak louder than you're used to, or maybe folks who, when you were making the point about, you know, if you want to express your opinion, either be a teacher to a boss, even that could be very cultural, or from where you were raised and what part of the country. Do you say what you think, or do you just kind of be respectful to someone who's older in a different position than you? All right, so let's keep that in mind in this next activity, and you're going to be moving again, so I'm going to read some statements, and then I'd like you to go, oh, did someone pull down, there's something underneath almost never, I think. Another sheet? No? Yeah. No? Okay, I guess we're good. All right. So now I'm going to read a few other things, and you're going to move around careful so you got all these chairs in circles that you don't trip. And again, it's a silent activity. So you can see all over here around the room. And I'm going to read them in case you, from where you're sitting right now, you can't see every sign. There's one that says class, socioeconomic status. It's right over there. There's one that says education. I believe it's up here on the other side of the screen. One that says race, ethnicity. Where's that one? Over here by our camera person. There is gender, transgender. I'm not sure where that one is. It's over there. There is sexual identity, orientation. Okay, over by Lily, back there. Religion, spirituality, worldview. Okay, towards the back corner. Ability, mental, physical. That's up here in the front. Immigration history. Is it in the back? Oh, right in the middle. Right in the middle over there on the right side. Language, in the back middle. Colorism, pigmentation over in the back corner. Concepts of beauty, body image, okay, over here against the glass again. And finally, age, ageism. All right, so I'm going to read a statement, and I'll ask you to move to which of these signs is the most compelling for you after I read that statement. All right, and again, it's going to be another silent activity, so we're just using eyeballs and ears. So the first one, which identity do you identify with the most? Which identity do you identify with the most out of all of these? Remember, it's a silent activity, so you can really reflect on which of these identities is the one that is closest to you, at least the way you're thinking these days. Which is the identity that really compels you the most? identity do you identify with the most at Laverne? Here at the University of Laverne. Might not be different, but maybe it is. Here at the university, lots of books on education and ability, mental and physical. Each, I wish. Which identity do you identify with the least? Again, have a look at who's going where everybody's standing. Which identity do you struggle with the most? Which identity do you struggle with the most? The identity you struggle the most with. Move to the center if you discuss these struggles with anybody. Move to the center if you discuss this struggle with anybody. Sharers, as they say in 90211, 21 Jump Street, that's one. Thank you. This part of my identity has the most effect on how other people treat me. This identity has the greatest impact, the greatest effect on how other people treat me. Stay near that sign if you think that's also the strongest part of your identity. If it's not, move to the center. And observe that. This part of my identity has the most effect on how other people treat me, but if you don't think it's the most important part of your identity for yourself, move to the center. We have a big group in the center right now. It is easiest for me to work with someone that has this in common with me, whatever that thing is. It is easy for me to work with someone that has this in common with me. Easiest for me. I am most challenged when working with someone that overemphasizes this aspect of their identity. I am most challenged when working with someone that overemphasizes this aspect of their identity. Not your own. I have the most privilege, the most access regarding this aspect of my identity. I have the most privilege, the most access with this aspect of my identity. I've experienced the most prejudice with this aspect of my identity. I've experienced the most prejudice with this aspect of my identity. I've had the most rewarding experiences with this aspect of my identity. Rewarding experiences with this aspect of my identity. Last one. Which identity do you know the least about? Which identity do you know the least about? Folks over here, is it SES or immigration? Just trying to figure out which one you guys are at. Okay. And then, okay. There here. Got it. And have a look at that and what that might mean for the interactions we have across from you. Up the room, down the room. How might that affect your conversation, your communication, your interaction? Okay, please go join your facilitator and your facilitation group.
Even though I don't know much about it,
When it comes to immigration,
And then it's a read.
Yeah, and then you go, okay, so now you
like all
have three.
three.
Same with body image, trans did not need to be there. You could just specify it as gender.
Oh,
Why? Yeah, and sexual orientation. Like
where you're
that.
at.
I think I'll never be fully solidified though, because I'm always hoping that it's open to new things and exploring new things. So I'm always gonna be like, what it is, like it's so good, it's also looking for things. I'm always yeah, I'm always gonna be thinking, I'm always pushing things. So like for me, I don't have a couple things that I'm still challenging with, but in my head they're not big challenges that I'm gonna be really stressed about just because it's small.
Everybody's at that place. And I would love for everyone to feel the same way. That'd be awesome.
To push back on what you were saying, what you guys are saying, what putting this exercise right now is different.
Let's first talk about what might have been surprising for you during that exercise. Yes.
A vague observation. It wasn't that surprising, but it was an observation that for the concepts of beauty and body image, a lot of females were over there. Yeah.
And I'll come back over here, Nancy, but there was a comment that over here about that sign. Do you mind sharing what you shared in your group?
So I shared with my group that, I'm going to stand up because I can't see everyone. So I shared with my group that that surprised me the most because like for me, I struggle with like confidence and like everyone like has like their own insecurities and like we don't really like talk about it or like we don't really like notice that like everyone deals with it. And it like surprised me that more than half the room was over there when she asked like what do you struggle with, like what identity the most. And like it's crazy because like for me I see like everyone has like something about them that's pretty, but we don't like see it in ourselves. And so I just thought it was like really crazy that like everyone like struggles and like we all don't really realize it.
So speaking of struggle, what was a struggle in this exercise? What parts of this exercise were difficult for you?
Just about being honest with yourself about what you're struggling with most. Not like lying about what you think.
So facing yourself.
Yeah.
How about somebody else? What was a struggle in this activity?
We were saying how it was hard to just go to one specific, like he was saying that he's really like smart, he loves school, but then he's really like active too. So we couldn't choose, so some of us were like, we wish there was like a middle part, like after you guys were saying in the middle. We wanted to like that middle part to be in the middle, not just education or just race, it was hard.
When you finally made a choice, what tipped the scales? What made you end up selecting what you selected?
Well, we were saying we just went and wanted to stay there because we didn't know where to go.
So
we just found like a safe zone and we stayed there.
Okay, you found a safe zone, Catholic least resistance, something like that. Okay, thanks. Who else? Something you struggled with, something you struggled with in this activity.
One of the struggles was going to a corner or a section where you had the most privilege in, because we often go to the ones where we have the least, because that's the one, for me anyway, that I identify with. So having to admit, one, I have a privilege in some area and go to that and be able to speak about what that is, you almost feel ashamed as if, man, I have some privilege in an area that perhaps some other people are suffering in.
And I think when you did that, you were standing under gender/trans, is that correct?
Yes.
So as a man, you have privilege and you had to own that.
Right.
Anybody else that felt uncomfortable because in the privilege piece, where they stood during the privilege part?
Like, I was in the class and I was saying to my group that I feel like it's sometimes a bad thing because people look at you like what you wear, what car you drive, where you live and stuff, and it's like, that's just, like, I didn't choose what family I was born into, like, I can't control that stuff, so, like, they just see, like, the top layer, they don't see actually you, and so I actually think of it as, like, a bad thing, and, like, I don't like bringing that up. Like, I don't want people to know that. I want them to see me, not like what my family does.
Did anybody else have
judging, either in this exercise or just in life, like you were saying, in life, people judge you because of that one thing they know. Our hands here, but
yeah, people judge me because I've been in like class for like the whole time. So like even when you said like what was the strongest like identity you had, I stayed there because that was where I was born at. That's what I grew up like living my life. I was always like privileged like in everything. Like I always had everything, and like right now like I try to be as normal as possible. I drive a Civic instead of like a freaking Mercedes because I feel like I don't need to show off like what I have just so people can like say, oh, she's rich, she's got all the money, you know. I don't need that. I don't want to be on display. I'm not like a show that everybody needs to watch. Like I just want people to see me. So I try to be like as simple as possible. Like I don't buy all the fancy clothes. Well, sometimes I do, but not all the time.
Anybody else who's kind of like, I just want to be me and I don't care about these labels? Anybody feel like that?
I'm not sure what to say, but like I was telling my group, I don't ever really think about any of the stuff here, and it doesn't affect how I look at people. So this exercise, in a way, forced me to just pick things, even if I didn't really. It's not that I don't care about them, but it's just something that's something just I feel we shouldn't even really be dealing with at this point. And you know, we call ourselves an advanced species, but we still deal with these minor things that can be solved easily if we all, I guess, work together.
So yeah, it was really hard for me to kind of identify what my strongest and weakest, things were, because I'm a pretty well-rounded person. I lack in other areas, I'm stronger in others. I mean, there is no specific area where I'm weak, because I tend to think that I'm weak in everything, because you can never be perfect, you can never be good, you can never be the absolute strongest you can be. So it's just like some of the posters that I went to, I didn't really. I just went to them because, they kind of related most, or maybe even just a little bit, but I feel like there's only a select few of the actual topics that I actually identified with, or that, describe me even partially, so.
So let's talk about some of these signs. What about these labels themselves? Were they too direct? Were they too vague? If they were vague, what would you have liked instead? What irked you about that kind of thing?
I think one that people really didn't understand was the gender one, because you have trans attached to it, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I think people looked at that immediately and said, well, I'm not trans, so why would I go there? And so for me, like, for what you identify most as, I think I was the only one under gender, because I first identify as a male. That's, what I see when I wake up in the morning. And I just feel like it's towards the beginning, before people really thought about each and every sign for 3 or 4 questions. I think that one specifically was very vague, maybe intentionally, but I feel like if you're trying to get a point across to people like, hey, this is what you need to think about yourself, or this is how you view yourself and maybe you should change it, that maybe an explanation, like a short 2-sentence explanation of each one beforehand would serve people well.
Maybe not, maybe not. Yes.
There's a couple of people that have a leadership conference. If you need to go to that leadership thing, go ahead and step up.
It was at 11:45.
There's another one at 2.
I didn't understand the difference between race, ethnicity, and colorism and pigmentation. I didn't really see why we needed 2 different ones, and maybe that's just something I don't know.
Does somebody want to talk about that? Why there might be both pigmentation, color, and race, ethnicity?
And I had asked this question in my group for clarification, because I know some of these words we don't really use in everyday, lingo. So when you think about, race and ethnicity, you really think about your ethnic makeup, right? regionally where you come from, the race, right? When you think of colorism and pigmentation, it's the color of your skin. So for example, I come from a Latino background, right? So my race and ethnic makeup is that I'm a Latina, Mexican descent. But in my family, I'm considered güera, right? The light one, the white one. But I also have some people in my family who are dark, prietos. So that's where the colorism and pigmentation comes in, right? And so that may be different for someone. Like for example, my family, we're all in that category, race and ethnicity. But we all have different experiences based on this colorism and pigmentation, where some of us, unfortunately, don't feel beautiful because we've been told we're not light enough. So I think that's what that means for me, and I hope that I defined that for some of you.
One, she didn't get a bear. She's been asking for it again.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You want a bear? I got one.
And two, I'm Native American and Dutch, and so I'm just really dark due to the native, but I've been been pulled over by a cop and he didn't ask for my insurance. And I had my friend with me, and he said, he wrote Hispanic on the ticket, and I asked why. He said, oh, Mexicans usually don't have insurance paperwork, so I didn't ask. And then we went to court, and I told the judge that my ticket got revoked. Because of my color, and because I'm in the sun so much as a swimmer, I just get really dark. But I have family in the Netherlands right now, and they're all blonde hair and blue eyes. I just got dark from my mom. So I've gotten completely, I can be over there and I can be over with race, just because I'm like second generation Dutch, and native, I mean, there's not really much to it, but I mean, think about how many other people are darker here versus being white, and just sometimes privileges that you do get from just being that color.
And really, they are all labels, a lot of things that we just made up. A lot of this stuff doesn't exist in nature. Some of it does, like our age, whatever that is, but not our attitudes about it. Because our attitudes here in this country might be very different than attitudes in a different country about age or gender, or things like that. I know it's almost time to go, so just one last thing, and this has to do with my understanding of the assignment that I think you have related to this conversation you've had today. So let's just do that for a minute. You can say exactly where you are. Kind of wrapping it all up and referring us to our assignment.
With an identity, a sense of meanness. And over time, propelled by biology and culture, our sense of meanness expands, encompassing such things as family, tribe, city, religion, country. But then, for many of us, our expanding sense of meanness slows way down. We get more rigid. Our boundaries become more firm. Those left outside our boundary become the other, me and them, competitors, threats, even enemies. But what science now tells us, and wisdom traditions have long taught, is that everything is interconnected. Nothing is truly separate. Who we are includes everything that exists, which means that to pose an enemy, to fight an enemy, is to fight ourselves, and with increasingly disastrous consequences. We live in a time when we're being both pushed and pulled to continually expand our sense of self, of who we are, to take in new information, new ideas, new perspectives, changing our very understanding of who we are. Sometimes this can feel very threatening, and there may be aspects of us we do not like. We may get angry, defensive, fearful, but these are just signs that our boundaries are quite rigid and need to, loosen up a bit. Because we know from evolution that it is by taking in what is that we're able to transform what is into something new and much, much better. Well, that is the process and the promise of evolution.
About me, I think that's your assignment. At some point, it'll be your assignment. And so hopefully today
these conversations about being generous with yourself and being generous with others when people are really trying to think differently. That's not easy, that's hard. So give yourself a break on that. Encourage yourself, encourage others. When you're talking about communication, remember that it might be super different than someone else, and not to get in the way of you getting to know that person and knowing yourself better, because it's when we confront, like our Pac-Man here, when we confront other people that we get to know ourselves better. And then finally, all those layers of the onions of who we are, and why it is so difficult to stand under one sign and only one sign, because you can't separate. I can't separate being a mother from being Latin, from being a woman, from being a worker. It's all wrapped up together, and sometimes that makes it really hard to get through a day, because they're all demanding things from me. So these are some questions which I'll share with your professors, reflection questions that you might want to look at when you're writing this paper, this reflection that will be part of your portfolio. And I think that's it. Thank you very much. It's a late Friday afternoon.